As day gives way to evening, so too does the calendar shift towards an absolutely monumental event. This is the kickoff of OTB Season 10. And welcome inside Studio 1A, a slight upgrade, I guess we'll say, in celebration of Season 10. SideBar here, the Commissioner. It is incredible that we are talking to you tonight 10 years, roughly, from when this whole thing began. It's tough to believe that about a decade ago, it was a conversation, a coast-to-coast conversation, between the future Commissioner and the future League Nemesis about starting a fantasy football league. 10 years later, here we are as we welcome inside the broadcast booth to our League Nemesis, Sanchez and Butthead. Can you believe we are here talking about Season 10?
I can't, because I don't even remember having the conversation of having the idea of starting the league. What I do remember is us having our first season where there was no money involved and a champion was crowned, and that champion, who's no longer with us in the league, asked me in the hallway, "Hey, when do I get my money?" And I said, "We're not doing money in this league." And, you know, listen, we've come a long way. We've had our ups and downs. I think the biggest disappointment for me is you winning, because I enjoy it when you don't win. And we've got, two-time champions. We've got one organization that wins the first time around and then goes like 1-12 the next time and then wins again. So the unpredictability of this league is at an all-time high, and 10 years is impressive. And I can't wait to see what the new year brings. Not only from a rule standpoint, but what you might have up your sleeve as the Commissioner. As we all know, you can be a little bit deceitful. I
wouldn't exactly say that, but okay, thank you. And it is very on brand for you to suggest that. Indeed, I mean, if you think about it, and I'm going to throw up some names on the screen here. Firstly, we've had 9 of 12 OTB franchises with us for at least 9 years. 11 of 12 have been with us for at least 6 years. Our newbie, so to speak, greatest show on paper, they're going to be entering into their 4th season. So from an attrition perspective, 12-team fantasy league, I mean, it is remarkable. And it speaks to, again, just the bond that we have between league owners across a decade, all of the relationships forged, the competitive nature of this league, the camaraderie, all of that. We've got 6 active champions, 2 of which have won 2 times, Cincinnati and greatest show on paper, as we've already talked about, 2 out of the last 3 years. We've also got noted franchises that are easily the most accomplished franchises to have never won. Between Shipwreck and the Waverman, there are 6 regular season points titles between them. In fact, only PTT and SideBar are active league members with point records, regular season point titles. That tells you the dominance of those 2 teams still trying to break through. And don't forget about the franchises that are what I would classify as on the move in the last few years. I mean, Wristbands was a punchline for the first 8 years, a good-natured punchline, but a punchline. And to have made the playoffs and be one of the best teams in OTB in the last 2 seasons. And then Sweet Home Chicago, oh my goodness, 2 straight division titles. They are looking like a team to have your eye on from week 1 every year lately. And then, of course, the fast starters, the Gronk, TDs, and the Regulators, 2 teams that haven't quite found a way to get over the hump, even though they always start strong. You always see them at 3-1, 4-1, and then things seem to go awry. Maybe this will be the year in this milestone Season 10. I'm going to throw one number at you, Garcia, if you'd like to respond to. That number is 16-23. That is the record of greatest show on paper in their career in OTB, aka in the last 3 seasons. They've got 2 titles, mind you, in that time. To me, it speaks to, it's not just about wins. What does it speak to for you?
Well, it cements the fact that in life, and much like in fantasy football, you don't need to be good. You just need to be lucky, and that's how greatest show on paper has pretty much gotten by. Not only his livelihood, but also when it comes to fantasy football. But you got to give credit where it's due, and it's an impressive feat. 2 championships already within 3 years, and let's see if he can, defend his championship. I'm going to say probably not, based on what he did the second season after winning the first one. So will he repeat? Will he not? Only a few more months before we know. And one other thing about the punchline, I'm sure a lot of us want to punch ourselves in the head when Chris makes certain decisions for his organization, but maybe this is the year Wristband brings the title home to wherever he is these days. I think it's in Pennsylvania somewhere. So,
Indeed. And so let's shift over to off-season conversation. We have a lot to get through in a very short time, so we are going to breeze through a lot of items. Of course, we're going to talk about the ballot, but we're not quite there yet. Let's talk quickly about the planned schedule. Okay, so you probably are somewhat familiar with this schedule. It is somewhat the same every year, although the cadence in terms of the months that we do it can be a little bit different. Next week will be the week that we put out the ballot. So we're talking about the items tonight. We'll give you some time to watch the video. If you're interested in it, the ballot comes out next week for voting. In early May, we think-ish, is going to be the time frame in which we reveal the ballot results. That will be a live show, first live show of the season. Late May will be our draft lottery selection night. Again, the ping pong balls determining the draft order. That is also a live night. July-ish will be our schedule release, our prize details, and then, of course, in August, our Season 10 draft night. And I will say about that we still don't know exactly what we're going to do for draft night. Now, we know it's going to be live. Will it be an event where people are coming here? Will it be something like a broadcast last time? I think there's still a lot to be determined. And even outside of the pandemic, it's more that people really loved the format last year. I got a lot of great feedback from folks that really enjoyed these ridiculous co-hosts having some fun with the draft night like a traditional kind of football broadcast. So again, there is no decisions yet, but the one thing that you may have noticed is I don't have dates yet, especially for the draft, and that's why I want to address it right now. We're monitoring the 17-game schedule as it relates to the fantasy football season. Okay, so there are a few things on this ballot that may or may not shift how that 17-game schedule is structured. Right now, my guess is, unless something gets passed that's different, is that it will be a 14-game regular season for the fantasy season, and then a 3-week playoff structure. I'm assuming that's what NFL Fantasy will qualify as standard, but I'm going to wait to see what happens if it is indeed standard, or if it's not. We'll find out. So that's what we're leaning towards, but more to come there. And that's also because, again, the preseason schedule is now different. So week 3 becomes week 2. When is it safe to draft? All that stuff we don't know for sure yet. I'm guessing it's going to be the weekend before Labor Day, like it always is. But again, we're not going to put anything out there just yet. One other thing before I throw to Garcia for a quick take is we are going to be video-centric this year as we've been shifting. One thing I wanted to mention in Season 10, there will be very few email, at least there might be email links to video. There'll be very few written words, I should say. So everything from the off-season content to the power rankings and some of the other stuff that we traditionally wrote out, that will all be handled in video this year, co-hosted by yours truly. So know that, and if you are missing something, feel free to text if you don't know something, but the video is probably where you can find it. Garcia, any thoughts to that rollicking off-season schedule thus far?
It's great to hear that people enjoyed our banter and the draft day coverage that we provided. Probably the most in-depth draft day coverage you'll ever find when it comes to fantasy football. The other thing, too, is, again, when it comes to the email distribution and the content that comes out, I would always just scroll to the bottom to read the power rankings to see what you, put for the league and the teams and, how you basically took shots at us. So now I look forward to actually hearing it firsthand from you, as much as others will be too. But as for the 17-game schedule, it's funny how there might be a certain rule that is going to play a big role in this 17-game schedule. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things roll out there. And again, August isn't too far away.
It is true. And as it turns out, it seems that the league office might have a little bit of breaking news, as it turns out. We talked about surprises on this show. We talked about doing things in commemoration of Season 10. This is breaking news in this video. For the first time in 10 years, OTB is going to launch a divisional realignment. That's right, one season only, in which the divisions that you have traditionally found yourselves in will not be the divisions anymore. Now, there will still be 2 divisions. You will still play your traditional rivalry game with your team of choice twice. That will still happen. However, in June, there will be a live event to determine the draft order. So I'm going to put the schedule back up with this additional event now. In June, we will have the first ever OTB divisional reseeding show. in which Garcia and I will draw out of a hat the teams to be within each division, 2 divisions, and we will find out what kind of implications that has for franchises that have been in the same divisions with each other since the beginning. And again, this is a 1-year only thing. We can vote if we want to do this every year after that in season 11. But in season 10, we're spicing things up. We will have a live event to unveil our divisions, which teams will go where. Garcia, your thoughts, the first big announcement in season 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big of an announcement, but okay, that's cool. You know, I mean, this could work out to your benefit, or it could be just a disastrous idea of yours where you might be pitted in the same league, Shipwreck, Carl, and Ian, greatest show on paper, while I'm down in the Dwellers with the likes of wristbands. So I could actually benefit from this. So, you know, hey, I'm all for changing things up, as we will find out when it comes to the ballot and some of the rules that you'll see across the board there. But this should be exciting. I know we originally had talked about policy finding ways to do the original 6, or so to speak. But, you know, when you did your math, you realized there was more than 6 teams that were in the original league. So, you know, it's not here nor there. But, you know, hey, kudos to you, man. You're always trying to change things up to benefit your outcome.
Wow, I wouldn't go that far. I don't know. I will not know. That's why it's a lot.
You know what? I do know. I know how you play this game. So that's cool.
I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, we are going to move though. If you have more questions on that, obviously we can talk about. We're going to move because again, we talked about doing things at a rather breakneck speed for this show. So let's shift over to ballot conversation now. We are going to go through the ballot. We're not going to do it in the same way as always. We're not going to go item by item. In fact, I'm going to be throwing 5-ish items up in the screen at a time. Garcia will choose, of course, which ones he wants to talk about more. One thing that I want to put up on the screen to start is the current lineup in OTB. You'll see it on that side of the screen there. Remember that a lot of what we're going to talk about on this ballot is going to shift this lineup, and there are things that are going to kind of be relying on each other. If this passes, if that passes, I have tried to simplify it as much as I possibly can. And so what I would say is on ballot night, so to speak, or the night that you vote, what I would want you to do is don't try to overthink it. Don't think how many flexes will be there if I vote for this. I'll show you what I mean as we go through it. But basically, I'm going to try to simplify. It's really, do you want this or do you not want this? I'll talk about the logistics, but it's going to be that simple for folks to vote. So with that, let's go straight into lineup items. A very full list, as it always is, our fullest list of all. And so let's go into lineup items 1 through 5. Again, these are all items that would influence our lineup or roster construction. First and foremost, the easiest one to think about, it'll be on the top of the ballot. Remove flex 3, okay? So eliminate that position entirely is number 1. Number 2 is remove a bench position. Okay, obviously it's a 12-team league with 6 bench spots, 3 flexes at the moment, and so there are quite a bit of we'll say, scarcity in the waiver wire, so this would be somewhat maybe to mitigate that. Number 3, remove the tight end position. So we've got a lot of removing and eliminating to start. Those are simple enough ballot items. It's yes or no, obviously. Then we get into some interesting ones. Item number 4 would be to replace the tight end position with a flex position. Now, as you can see in the parentheses, number 3 would supersede that. So if the tight end position's gone, well then that's it. Item 4 is meaningless. We won't even tell you. I mean, I guess we can tell you, but it won't matter what ends up changing. If we vote to keep the tight end position, then item 4 will matter, and whether you vote to replace that position with a flex, which means you could still start a tight end, but you don't have to. That would be item 4. And then item 5, a waiverman favorite. Replace a flex spot with a super flex. Now this is going to be regardless of how many flexes exist. If you vote this yes, that means that there will be 1 flex, no matter how many flexes we have left. One of them will be a super flex, meaning that you can effectively add a quarterback to it. You can still start the other lineup positions, but you could add a quarterback to it. I will pause. Garcia, what strikes you in the first 5 lineup items?
I find it amusing that I think years ago I was on the whole bandwagon that tight ends are just stupid to have on a roster, and finally now somebody's kind of joined the train. So that's kind of unique to, only took them 3-4 years to realize that it's just ridiculous, because when you look at the overall rosters of teams, you maybe have 2 to 3 really good tight ends, and then everyone's just a crapshoot. I love the super flex idea, mostly because of the fact that now we can actually use 2 quarterbacks. And I love the idea most because I know, as you just shook your head, it would just infuriate you, and it would only just make you hate playing fantasy football even more, and you'll probably just demolish the league. So we may even never have a show again. But I think it's a unique approach to changing things up for year 10. I don't know if this is something that can gain enough traction for year 11, 12 into year 50. But I think just to kind of spice things up a little bit more than a realignment of an actual division, adding a super flex is something that I could be swayed towards voting to.
Let me tell you this. The Superflex idea is a Trojan horse because nobody is not going to start a quarterback in that position. So basically, if you vote for Superflex, you are effectively saying I want a 2 QB league. Now, I should say that within that ballot item, it does say that if that is passed, the rosters, the teams, would be able to carry a maximum of 3 quarterbacks. Do the math. That still means that there will potentially be no quarterbacks left on waivers week to week, depending on how teams configure their rosters. I'm assuming everybody's going to gobble up quarterbacks. And again, this isn't the merit of whether this is a good idea or not. I'm just trying to let you know. Don't, lull yourself into this security of like, oh, well, I could still start anything there. Who's not going to start a quarterback? Even your boy Sam Darnold is going to put up 10 to 12 points a game, which is anything you could ever want in your last flex position. So, on a bad day. So, for Sam Darnold, a good day for your flex position. So, don't mistake it. Superflex is a quarterback 2 league is what we would convert to. And the other thing I would just say is, I think one thing that you could see ring true in items 1 to 5 is it is clear that we were stretched a little thin last year. If you looked at even the best teams in OTB, there was not a lot of depth they had at the benches towards the end of the year, which doesn't mean you have to, but I think a lot of people felt like, okay, I think maybe with the 3rd flex and the IR spot, maybe we've actually reached the point that we should bring it back a little bit.
I was saying that all last year that there's just not enough talent pool out there. And, finally people might have caught on to that as well. But in terms of the super flex and having a second quarterback, think about it. Sam Darnold 10, 12-point afternoon with Carolina is going to probably be better than what Jack Doyle gets for 4.5 points, whatever it may be, or even, 0 points, which we all know can happen. Unless you're shipwrecked who has like Irv Smith and he puts up like 29 points.
I'll say too, I love things to be competitive. This is a 12-team league with all these bench spots. I think it's a very challenging league to win. And I like the idea of not a super. I think a super flex is easier. And I know other people might disagree. I think it's easier to figure out which 2 quarterbacks you're going to start week to week than figuring out your 2nd or 3rd flex. That's just my opinion. And I don't typically like things that make things simpler. I don't want things unnecessarily difficult, but I'm trying to make this as strategic as possible for the winner. That's one of the things that I don't like about the Superflex.
Wow. I could see you having Anthony Dalton and Daniel Jones as your QB1 and QB2.
Doesn't sound like me. Doesn't sound like me.
Perfect lineup right there for you.
We're gonna move on. 6 to 10. Item 6 to 10. Again, trying to simplify this as much as possible. Number 6, add defenses back to OTB. This is what I'm talking about with simplifying. Just look at that and ask yourself when you get it on the ballot, do I want defenses back? Yes, there's going to be some logistics to this. If the Flex 3 is not eliminated, it would be swapped. If the Flex 3 is eliminated, it would be added, so it would be another lineup item. Who cares? The point is just, do you want defenses? Do you not want defenses? And I will also mention that in this iteration of defenses, the person who put it on the ballot said that there will be no points for points scored, so to speak. So remember how you started with 10, and that number would go down depending on the defense, how many points they give up. You would only be accruing points for turnovers and for sacks and for defensive scores or safeties as well. So that is one item to contemplate and remember that it's a little different if we brought it back. Item number 7 is to add kickers back to OTB, a league Nemesis favorite. This would be regardless of how many flexes are there, but it would be to also standardize their scoring. 3-point scoring for any kick, 1 point PAT for any kick, no negatives for missing. I like that a little better. I still hate kickers. Item number 8, increase touchdown passes to 5 points. This is an interesting one because it might seem innocuous, but this dramatically might shift the value of mobile quarterbacks. Because remember the difference between rushing and passing touchdowns, 6 and 4 points. This would somewhat level the playing field a bit. Item number 9, bonus points. I don't know how we get this every year. We always have this on there. I never hear people calling for it over the season, and yet it always winds up in my inbox. 3 for 350 yards passing. So a quarterback that passes for more than 350, you'd get 3 points. If you have a rusher that goes for over 100 rushing yards, that's at 3 points. Receiving, that's 3 points. If they somehow manage to do it both, Dalvin Cook or something, you get 3 points for each. Just know that. So that's your bonus point structure. Then item 10, I was a little surprised to see this one too. Garcia, I'm sure you're going to have an opinion on it. repeal PPR, bring it back to the traditional scoring, which is obviously no points per reception. Garcia, where do you want to start on this one?
Defense is stupid idea. Love the kicker idea. 5 points for a quarterback. Yeah, whatever. What's an extra point here and there? The bonus points, ridiculous. Whoever thought that up is either, doesn't understand the object of fantasy football. You already get enough points for a reception. But, hey, look at people want to repeal the PPR. So maybe we're onto something. I'm just curious who actually came up with that idea, because for the longest time, it seemed like you and I were against it, and now somebody's joined the fold. So I'm a little bit confused. Is this something where Brian has lost his grip on the league and may need to explain, what's happening here? Because for the longest time, I kind of accepted the fact that this was just going to be a PPR league for the rest of our lives. So maybe somebody wants to change things up for the better. This one should be interesting. I will say PPR. I've accepted it, and I found ways to use it to my advantage. Obviously, you love it now because you won under a PPR system.
I would go that far. So as it relates to PPR, I was surprised it was on there, because now standard scoring in fantasy on most platforms is actually half-point PPR. We've actually become a standard league, which is a weird way to think about it. And I think it's one of those things that, familiarity bias of some sort. You get used to something, and all of a sudden you don't hate it as much. Now, that said, I'm not saying I still won't vote to repeal it. And I think it's an interesting one, because last year it was 7-5, so it was still close. It didn't move. The people that were still against PPR were still against PPR enough to vote against it. And so what I think is interesting is, will one or two people shift? You don't know. Will regulators be doing some behind-the-scenes politicking? I don't know. I find that one interesting. As it relates to bonus points, that's the other one I'll just mention quickly. Yeah, think about it in practice. You want to sit here with your running back that had a 98-yard day, your opponent had a 101-yard day, their running back, and they get 3 extra points. I hate it. I know that fantasy football is already archaic to some degree, campy, if you will. However, I think this is even worse. This is just over the top, and it just really doesn't have a lot of strategic value. It's more so, I think, a little gimmicky. Again, that's just how I feel about it. So I would prefer, it not to be there, but we'll see. It's always there. Every year we always have this on the ballot. It gets like 2 votes, but it's always there every year.
If we go to that route, we might as well just change the league name from OTB to BPL, Bonus Points League.
Oh, seriously. All right, let's move to those structural items, okay? These are items that I have determined as I got them in. I've categorized this way because they would change some structure of the league, whether it's let's just get to it. We've got 5 items that I would consider structural. Number 1, revert all playoff seeds to record-based seeds. Now, I will say that the person that has put some of these items on the ballot, they have named these rules certain things. I have not put them on the screen because I wanted to try to get through the show as quickly as possible, efficiently, if you will. They will be named on the ballot, though. And so just know that you'll see the names of the certain person that put it on there. It will be there. Anyway, this will revert all playoff seeds back to record-based seeds. Number 2 is an interesting one. Eliminate the $0 bids from the free agent acquisition budget. Make the minimum $1. So ahead of a waiver wire, you would have to spend at least $1 to bid on a player. No more $0 bids. If it was possible, we would carry this through into free agency. Even when you can pick up a player without a waiver period, you'd still have to spend at least $1. I will say that this is actually something that is going to be conducive on what the fantasy platform will allow me to do. There's a chance only half of that is going to be possible. There's a chance none of it will be possible. However, I still want you to vote on it. I won't know what the fantasy platform will let me to do until later this year. So if it's doable, we would implement it. Item 3 is to prohibit future draft pick trades in season. I'll get to that more in a moment. Item 4 is to add $10 to the league fee for an annual trophy. And item 5, Garcia, I don't even know if you've seen this one yet, is to add $10 to the league fee for an Inception tournament. I will explain that in a moment. Garcia, I'd like to get your thoughts first on what you think of these structural items.
Listen, I'll be the first to say that I've always kind of gone back and forth on the wins and loss record to, determine a playoff team and then the total points. So I guess it all depends which way the wind blows. The biggest thing for me out of that is going to be the fact that we are a league that certainly has issues with the structure and how things are developed over time. And I feel like, there's some traditionalists who like the win-loss situation. And there's some like you who believe that in order to really, claim being superior in the league is having the most total points. And I think that's not an accurate reflection of who is the best. That's just my take. I think it's all based on winning and losing when it's all said and done. I can't wait to hear this exception rule that you've come up with, and I'm sure everyone else wants to hear, because, again, I have no knowledge of this.
No.
This is all you.
This is me. Yeah.
Please, you have the floor.
Okay, so a couple quick things. We're going lightning quick because we only have a few minutes left, but a couple quick things. One, for those that are wondering how come there are items about league fees, which are typically just handled by the league office, these are any item that would involve giving money to different causes that wouldn't just result in like a split democratic, everybody gets a share. Those items can be put on the ballot, because that would be like with the trophy. You're taking money out to do something different. It's not me, the commissioner, that gets to determine that. For me, whatever money comes in, I always want to distribute back out. So that's why those items are on there. Draft picks, look, we have a lot of fun on this show. There are usually things that I comedically try to influence you one way or the other. I will say this to the league very quickly. I would prefer if we could actually pass this one. I have found as a commissioner, it's impossible to fairly negotiate between the teams in season when they're trading draft picks, because it's always only one team that's tanking that wants to give away anything usually, and the other team is looking for a championship that year, so they're willing to give away a 5th round pick for some superstar. And I feel uncomfortable being in the middle of that. I think it's still great to trade draft picks. I think we can do it before and after the seasons. In season, it's just incentivized inappropriately. And now the inception idea. So here's the idea. $10 additional would go towards the pot of money at the start of the year. If you make the playoffs, you get those $10 back at the end of the year. Those $10 are yours. If you do not make the playoffs, that $10 contribution will be part of a winner-take-all $60 consolation tournament. Now, you would not be playing for yourself in this consolation tournament. You would actually be putting that $10, so to speak, on a team that is in the playoffs that you are picking to win. If you are the 7th team left, so if you are the team that just missed the playoffs, you get to pick first. Everybody has to pick one of the 6 teams. You get to pick first, and then on the line down it goes till the last place team gets whatever team's left. Whoever's team that they've chosen wins it all, gets all the money. It's just a way to potentially incentivize a little bit additional of rooting interest for the teams that are still in it. I got to move quickly, but Garcia, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that idea.
I'm eager to know if you and wristbands are both in the playoffs. Who in their right mind? I mean, I would just pass. I'm like, I'm not putting money on either one of you. I'd put it on a consolation team. I just take the money. I don't want it.
I understand. All right, we're gonna move to existential items last, and I say it somewhat jovially, although what I mean by that is that these are items that I think really change the existence. They change the being of OTB. It is truly a different league if these items get passed. There are 4 of them. They are increasingly more complicated. The first one's a little easier. Convert OTB to an auction draft. So as you know, it's a snake draft right now, conventional. This would be an auction draft. Item number 2 is to increase the playoff bracket to 8 teams. But, and we'll find out quickly who put this on there, like any good political bill, it is stuffed with very interesting things in it if you pass it. In addition to the bracket being increased to 8 teams, all the non-division seeds would be based on points. I don't understand how this is possible when someone who seems to want record-based seeds all of a sudden wants points-based seeds, but neither here nor there. This would convert everybody to points-based seeds. Oh, and by the way, if you are the one team that wins both regular season, best record, and you've got the most points, you get to choose who the second bye-week team is with you. It would not be the other division winner. You can select from the playoff pool who will join you in that bracket. We're going to let that guy talk about his item in a second. Item 3 is convert the playoff bracket to a March Madness tournament. So basically, most of the money would even be paid up just to the regular season winner and to the points winner. However, at week 14, week 13, whatever it would have to be, maybe week 12, we would actually start with a March Madness tournament. 1 plays 12, 2 plays 11, etc., until we had a winner. So everybody's in the playoff bracket at that point. Item number 4, the last one. My goodness, I'm running out of breath. Keeper League. And for this Keeper League, it would be a 2-year maximum, right? So you can only keep a player for 2 consecutive years. you would have to choose a player that you drafted in the 6th round and beyond, and you would take that player at ADP. So even in the year that you draft Odell Beckham in the 14th round, the following year, if his ADP is 2 and you want to keep him 2nd round, then you would have to give up a 2nd round pick per, obviously, the NFL platform's ADP. I don't even know where to go. I think I'm just going to turn it to Garcia. Whatever you want to talk about, floor is yours, man.
I mean, whoever came up with the idea of the 8-team playoff format, and then if the winner is both the crown of total points and wins total, the authoritarian approach of who you get to choose for that second bye team really, I think, is what everyone would covet in this league. Because let's say, for example, I'm the winner of both sections and you're the runner-up. The idea of not giving you that bye week and say give it to wristbands, I mean, that would just be awesome. That's, of course, if wristbands was to make the playoffs, which he's done now. So, we can't make light of that. But I think that's just kind of a fun way to, stick it to an opponent that you don't like, a rival, or even strategically put somebody in a better situation and put your, what would be kind of your heaviest opponent in a disadvantage. As for the March Madness approach, I love the idea. I think that's going to get everyone involved. I think we are spending too much time thinking that we feel like, the regular season is so important. And then as you start to fall off the quote-unquote division standings, whatever it may be, then you lose interest in its entirety. Then you're trying to trade Devontae Adams for, an 8th round pick, things like that. So, it keeps everyone in check, and it keeps us all just entertained, because that's why we do this. I don't think we do this for anything else other than to be entertained. At least I don't. I mean, you might be a different course. But, all great ideas. The auction draft idea, that might involve a lot of homework for us. So that might be a challenge, and we all hate homework, I assume, knowing most of these guys in the group. And then the keeper league thing, it's one of those things that's been something we've approached year over year. And as you know, many of us are married and kids. We shouldn't have any issues with commitment. But it comes to a keeper league, we have issues with keeping guys we like. I mean, I'm not saying I'd keep Devontae Singletary or Devon Singletary, my bad, but there might be a guy that you relish, after the 6th round, and you're willing to know that you're going to have him in that 2nd pick or that 2nd round overall. So, something to think about. I mean, we should always consider keeper league. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be doing a service for the fantasy football world.
Sure, as you said. So I'll say a couple of things. The 17-game schedule, as I referenced at the beginning, those playoff bracket ideas, as improbable as they are to pass, they would be able to be better accommodated with a 17-game schedule. So with an 18 playoff bracket, you could still have the full 13-game regular season. It wouldn't increase by a week.
And just the record show, that rule and that idea was submitted even before Goodell said there was going to be 17 games. So one has to wonder, is the NFL being influenced by a certain fantasy football league? It's a possibility. It's a possibility.
It's a possibility. So again, March Madness tournament again. You'd have an extra week basically.
Would be awesome.
Tournament. Again, I mean, I think you know where I stand. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to just say I think you know where I stand. Now remember that as we go into our final item here, which is just league voting, and talk a little bit about the next steps. Remember that the ballot will go out next week, okay? I'll put the schedule, actually, the updated schedule, back on here now, too. Okay, so the ballot goes out next week. The results will be revealed sometime in early May. That will be a live show. We're very excited about it. We will not know the results until we reveal it to you in early May together in some type of live event. Remember, too, as always, 7 yeses, right? So if you get 7 yeses, that will be the pass. 5, it will, or up to 6 no's. Once you get your 6th no, that will be it for it. There is no chance that it will survive. If you have questions, this was a quick running show, please feel free to text the commissioner, send an email, etc. As I said, ballot is going to be next week. He is Sanchez and Butthead, League Nemesis on the West Coast, SideBar on the East Coast. Hey, this has been a very fun, very entertaining kickoff show. We are excited, and we look forward to seeing what happens next. Happy voting. Like I said, if you've got questions, let me know. But we look forward to seeing you again in early May for what will be an exciting live event.